In this video, we're going to look at how to set up asset depreciation monitoring in Hornbill to give you real-time information on the value of your equipment. In the Service Manager application, there is a depreciation calculator available to view on each asset right here. There's a fair bit of information in here, which we'll come back to shortly. But what's important is that you won't see this in your instance unless it's been set up. It'll look something like this. So let's start with making this available to asset managers to work with. To begin, a Hornbill administrator, so someone with the Asset Manager admin role, needs to go to Service Manager Configuration Settings and under Assets, select Manage Types. And from here you can set the fields that are displayed in Service Manager, which is just where we were a minute ago. So I want to use the depreciation calculator for monitoring my laptop assets. So here I'll navigate to Laptops, and here is where I choose the fields that I want to make available in Service Manager. And I'll add them to the Details tab. In my example, I'm going to add the depreciation fields that are necessary for the calculator to be utilised. These are fields common to all assets, so we'll find them here. For simplicity, I'm going to locate all the depreciation fields and simply add them all. So when I select Add All, everything shown in the filtered list is added. There's a mixture of some legacy fields and some newer ones, but adding them all here is the simplest thing to do. Now there's one other field which is mandatory to use the depreciation calculator, and that is cost. But as that's a default field, unless you've removed it, you shouldn't have to add it. Now the value of cost is used to denote the original purchase price of the asset. There are a couple of other optional fields that you can add that contribute to calculating the depreciation. And just to demonstrate, we'll add them here now. So the first field is residual value. And this helps you set the final value at the end of the depreciation term. The other one is the currency. And this really just displays the currency for your asset in the calculator and doesn't affect any of the numerical values. To make things look a bit nicer, I'm going to create a new section for the page called Asset Depreciation, and I'm going to move all the fields there. Now back in Service Manager, and with my Asset Manager hat on, let's find a laptop that this applies to. And here we can see that the fields have been added. But note that the depreciation calculator isn't showing in the side panel here like we saw at the start of the video. This is because it needs some data to work with. So let's update the fields to do that. The first thing we need is an initial cost. So what was the value of the asset when it was purchased? Remember, this isn't actually a depreciation field, but it's a default field, so you should find it in the Details tab. So once that's added, let's populate the depreciation fields. Now the first one here is the method of depreciation, and there are two types. The first is straight line. Now this reduces by a fixed monetary amount. The second method is reducing balance, and this reduces the value by a percentage. And with this method, there's a bigger depreciation at the start, and it gets smaller later on. Now it's worth noting here the depreciation value field, as depending on the method you choose, this is either expressed in currency or percentage, and we'll come back to this in a moment. Next, we set the start date for depreciation, and we set the entire duration of the depreciation in months until it goes to 0. And here we set the frequency, which is how often the depreciation occurs, again in months. So here my laptop is going to depreciate by £10 a month every month for 2 years. And now we can see here the final depreciation date as well as today's value. Now these values update in real time. If I log in again tomorrow, the estimated value today is going to be slightly lower. And any changes I make to the values are immediately reflected here. So remember the two depreciation methods? So if I change it here from straight line to reducing balance, we'll see the £10 changes to 10%. And the values will update to reflect this change. Similarly, if I change the start date of the depreciation term, so let's put it back a year earlier, we can see the updates immediately are reflected in the calculator once I've made that change. So once you're set, you can come back here to check the current value at any time in the future. Now, in practice, it can be quite laborious entering and editing this information for one asset at a time when you have a set of similar or identical assets. Now, for that, you can perform bulk edits to these fields. So let's say you have an order of the same laptops and all the depreciation data will be the same. So you can do that from here all in one go. So that's an overview of how Hornbill's asset depreciation tool works for giving you real-time information on the exact monetary value of your assets.